took a specific person to say, it's not your fault, once to me, and finally it hit. I don't know whether it was the way she was dressed or the way she spoke or what it was. There was synergy in the room, and I finally let go. And at that point, recovery started for me.
And then I just tried to sort of deal with it myself, and eventually I went into my medical doctor, which, looking back now, maybe wasn't the best first step, but he immediately prescribed me drugs, more drugs, and that was the last thing that I wanted. And I'm a very proud individual, and I didn't want to be on more drugs, and the stigma that was associated with, here's Eric, the guy who's, on prescription drugs for a mental illness. I just didn't want to be that guy. But at the same time, I said I was suffering so much from just trying to deal with things on my own that I felt that it was the right step to take.
Today, I haven't used drugs in 12 years and my disease is still present, so it just comes out in other ways. I, of course, was about 90 days clean, and I wanted to start saving others because that's where I come from. What came first, the codependent or the drug addict? Not sure. It's like the chicken and the egg, but as soon as I stopped using, I started trying to save all of you. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got in early recovery was to put my hands in my back pockets and squeeze, because that's the only asset I needed to worry about saving.
Think of Vince Lombardi. I think he said, I don't know the exact quote, but he said, yeah, we're going to go for yards, we're going to go for touchdowns and stuff like that, but we're also going to try to pick up inches all along the way. And I didn't see that in the beginning. The addictive mind, to me, it does transform and transmute through the process of recovery from one that really sees things black and white. So when I was accessing treatment, I wanted the answer. What's the answer? I would say to my first sponsor, tell me the answer. He's just like, well, we're here doing it. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I'd leave frustrated some days, right? And I didn't get that, just like every time I went and resorted to use after, especially after I had some introduction to recovery, and after I had said, well, I want to stop, and that's sort of sometimes where the horror begins for an addict, is when I want to stop and I realize, I'm still handcuffed to this freight train called my addiction. But the idea that every time I did something recovery oriented, that was actually having a small but profound impact on just my attitude towards life, the more I was connecting to people.
Relapse isn't a requirement. It's not part of my story, but it's part of most people's story. And what the research tells us is that the average amount of time that it takes for somebody to go from, so somebody who has abstinence as a goal to begin with, so the average amount of time that it takes for somebody to go from 1 day clean to the period when they've sustained 366 this year, by the way. That's a kick in the ass if you got clean last year. 365 days of consecutive abstinence, average time, wait for it, 8 years. So let's have realistic expectations about whether we're going to use or not use or have a slip, right? Let's try not to see it in black and white. Ambiguity is so hard, and Bob touched on that. It's black and white thinking. You need to learn to live in the question. And then someday, without ever noticing it, you live your way into the answer.
When the technology got better in my recovery, I would often ask doctors if I could record the conversation so I could have that tangible conversation, and because my mind just being so, my self-esteem being so low, and I just, I would misconstrue advice, and I would warp what was said, and I wouldn't have an actual thing that I could go back to and use to move forward. And then lastly, you need to find an ally. Having that human connection is paramount.
The thing that I wanted to say is, people talk about the pain of early recovery, and that's such a reality for me. I started using because my little boy died, my only child, and I did not want to face that pain. That's why I kept using. But you know what? If you didn't feel it going in, you're gonna feel it coming out. And that's the good news, that it only hurts when it's coming out. And that pain really is leaving your body. And so get a nice, pretty cord, select a beautiful ribbon in your favorite color, put it through a roll of toilet paper, tie it in a knot, hang it around your neck, and let it leave your body, because you can't hold it in.